It was supposed to be her happiest day, her 23rd birthday. The candles were lit, the cake was decorated, and her family gathered around her with love in their eyes. But by the next morning, the candles had burned out, and so had her light. What should have been a celebration of life became the night that took everything from her. This is the story of a young woman who trusted the wrong person, and that person was family. If you've ever trusted someone who ended up breaking you, take a deep breath. This story isn't just about tragedy, it's about the danger of silence, and why we must never ignore the signs. Because sometimes the monster isn't hiding under the bed. Sometimes it's sitting right across the dinner table. This is a story that will stay with you long after you finish watching. It's a story about trust, betrayal, family secrets, and the courage it takes to speak the truth when everyone around you wants silence. So settle in, because what you're about to hear needs to be heard. And if you know someone who needs to hear this too, share it with them, because awareness saves lives. Her name was Maya. Maya Rosalind Brooks, 23 years old with dreams bigger than the small town she grew up in. But to understand what happened on that birthday night, you need to understand who Maya was, where she came from, and why family meant everything to her. Maya was born in a town called Oak Creek, Ohio, population barely 5,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where Friday night football games are the biggest event of the week, and where family roots run deep, sometimes too deep. Her mother, Joanne, raised Maya mostly on her own. Maya's father left when she was just 4 years old, packed his bags one cold November morning in 2007 and never looked back. Joanne never talked about him much, and Maya learned early not to ask, so it was just the two of them for a long time, living in a small house on Elm Street, making the best of what they had. Joanne worked as a nurse at the local community hospital, pulling double shifts to keep food on the table and clothes on Maya's back. Money was always tight, holidays were modest, but Joanne made sure Maya never felt like she was missing out. She'd save up all year just to make Christmas special, just to see that smile on her daughter's face. And Maya, she adored her mother. She saw how hard Joanne worked, how much she sacrificed, and it made Maya want to be better, do better, make her mother proud. But here's the thing about growing up without a father. At least for Maya, she craved that male presence in her life. Someone stable, someone who could teach her things her mother couldn't, someone who made her feel protected. And that's where her uncle came in, Julian Drake. Julian was Joanne's older brother, 12 years older than her to be exact. Julian had always been the golden child in their family, the one who did everything right, got good grades, stayed out of trouble, built a respectable life. He worked as a manager at the local automotive manufacturing plant, had been there for 20 years, and everyone in town knew him. People would stop him at the grocery store just to chat, to ask his opinion on town matters, to tell him what a good man he was. And for most of Maya's life, she believed that too. Julian started showing up more after Maya's father left. At first, it was just helping Joanne with things around the house, fixing the leaky faucet, mowing the lawn, changing the oil in her car. But then he started coming to Maya's school events, her dance recital when she was 7, her middle school science fair, her high school graduation. He was there, camera in hand, smiling proudly like any father would. Joanne was grateful. She'd tell her friends how lucky she was to have a brother like Julian, someone who stepped up when her daughter needed a father figure. And Maya, she loved him. She called him Uncle Julian. But in her heart, he was more than that. He was the dad she never had. The week leading up to Maya's birthday was busy. She worked extra hours at both jobs, trying to add a little more to her savings. Joanne was at the house preparing, cleaning, decorating. Julian stopped by a few times that week, dropping off party supplies, helping set up folding tables in the backyard. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But if you ask Maya now, she'll tell you there were signs. Small things easy to dismiss in the moment. But in hindsight, they meant something. The way Julian's hugs lasted a little too long. The way he'd compliment her appearance, tell her she was growing into such a beautiful woman. The way he'd text her late at night, past 11 p.m., just checking in, asking if she was okay, if she needed anything. At the time, Maya thought it was care. She thought it was love. She thought it was what uncles did, but it wasn't. It was grooming. It was manipulation. It was a predator carefully laying the groundwork for what he planned to do. On the morning of her birthday, Maya woke up feeling hopeful. 23 felt significant somehow, like the start of something new. She went to work at the diner for the early shift, and her coworker surprised her with a cupcake and sang happy birthday. It was a small gesture, but it made her smile. After her shift, she went home to get ready for the party. Joanne had decorated the living room with streamers and balloons, and the smell of lemon cake, Maya's favorite, filled the house. Maya put on a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, and pulled her hair into a ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and thought, "This is going to be a good day." She had no idea how wrong she was. She had no idea that by tomorrow everything would be different. She had no idea that the person she trusted most would be the one to destroy her. Guests started arriving around 6 in the evening. Maya's Aunt Beatrice came first, bringing her 2 kids, Maya's younger cousins, who immediately ran around the house with too much energy. Then came Uncle Arthur and Aunt Evelyn, followed by a few family friends, the Henderson family from down the street, and the Caldwell family, who'd known Joanne for years. Natalie couldn't make it. She was out of state for an internship and had sent a gift in the mail, a leather journal with an inscription that read, "For all the dreams you're going to make real." Maya had cried a little when she read it. Julian arrived right on time at 7, carrying a beautiful cake decorated with fresh flowers and the words, "Happy Birthday, Maya," written in elegant script. He set it on the kitchen counter and hugged Maya tightly, told her she looked beautiful, told her he was so proud of her. Maya hugged him back, thanked him for the cake, for always being there. Joanne watched from across the room, smiling, grateful that her brother had been such a constant in her daughter's life. If only she'd known. If only any of them had known. The party was everything Joanne hoped it would be. There was music playing, classic hits from the 80s and 90s that everyone knew the words to. People were laughing, sharing stories, passing around plates of food. Maya's Aunt Beatrice told embarrassing childhood stories, and Maya groaned but laughed along. Uncle Arthur made a toast, raised his glass, and said to Maya, "The hardest working young woman I know. May this year bring you everything you've been working for." Everyone clinked their glasses, and Maya felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of belonging. This was her family. These were her people. She was safe here. Or so she thought. Julian stayed close to Maya throughout the evening. He'd refill her drink before she even asked, made sure she had enough food on her plate, and stood beside her during photos. At one point, he put his arm around her shoulder for a picture, and Maya leaned into him, smiling for the camera. That photo would later be used in court as evidence of how comfortable she felt with him, how much she trusted him, how normal everything seemed, because that's how predators operate. They don't look dangerous, they look safe. As the night went on, people started to leave. Maya's younger cousins were getting tired. Aunt Beatrice packed them up and headed home. Uncle Arthur and Aunt Evelyn left around 9:30, hugging Maya on their way out, telling her to enjoy being 23. The Hendersons and the Caldwells left shortly after. By 10, it was just Maya, Joanne, and Julian. Joanne was exhausted. She'd been on her feet all day, cooking, hosting, making sure everyone had a good time. She looked at Maya and said, "Baby, I'm going to head to bed. I can barely keep my eyes open." Maya smiled and said, "Go, Mom. You did amazing today. Thank you for everything." Joanne kissed her daughter on the forehead, hugged Julian, and told him not to stay too late. "I won't," he said. "I'll just help Maya clean up a bit and then head home." Joanne smiled, grateful as always, and went upstream. The house grew quiet. It was just Maya and Julian now, alone, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration that was supposed to be joyful. They started cleaning up in silence at first, stacking plates, wrapping up leftover food, throwing away paper napkins. Maya was tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes after a happy day. She started talking about her plans, about the cafe she wanted to open, about how close she was to having enough saved up. Julian listened, nodded, but he seemed distracted. "You've really grown up, Maya," he said suddenly, his tone different, heavier. Maya laughed it off. "I mean, I am 23 now." Julian stepped closer. "No, I mean, you've become a beautiful woman inside and out." Maya felt something shift in the air. It was subtle, but it was there, a discomfort she couldn't quite name. "Thanks, Uncle Julian," she said, trying to keep things light, trying to brush off the weirdness she was starting to feel. But Julian didn't step back. He stayed close, too close. "You know, I've always cared about you, right?" he said. "More than anyone." Maya's stomach tightened. "Yeah, of course. Your family." "It's more than that," he said, and his hand reached out, touched her arm. Maya froze. Every instinct in her body screamed that something was wrong, but her mind couldn't catch up. This was Uncle Julian, the man who'd been there her whole life. The man she trusted. This couldn't be what it felt like. This couldn't be happening. "Uncle Julian, I think I'm just going to finish up tomorrow," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm really tired." But he didn't move. "Maya, I just want you to know I've always felt a connection with you. Something special." Maya's heart was pounding now. She took a step back. "I think you should go." For a moment, Julian just stared at her. And then something in his expression changed. The warmth she'd always seen, the kindness. It was gone. What replaced it was something cold, something entitled. "Don't be like that," he said. "After everything I've done for you." Maya's hands were trembling. "Please just leave." But he didn't. And what happened next would change Maya's life forever. Maya's mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. This was her uncle, the man who took her for ice cream on her birthdays, the man who helped her mom fix things around the house, the man she called when she needed advice. How could this be real? How could this be happening? Julian stepped even closer, and Maya backed up until she hit the kitchen counter. There was nowhere else to go. "You're overreacting," he said, his voice calm, almost patronizing. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Maya. I'm just being honest about how I feel." Maya's throat felt tight. "Uncle Julian, this isn't okay. You need to leave now." But instead of leaving, he reached out and touched her face. Maya flinched, turned her head away and said, "Stop, please stop." For a brief moment, she thought maybe he'd listen. Maybe he'd realize what he was doing and leave. Maybe this nightmare would end. But it didn't. Julian's expression hardened. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I've been there for you your entire life. I've supported you, encouraged you, helped your mother raise you, and you can't even show me a little gratitude." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. Gratitude? Is that what he thought this was about? "I am grateful," she said, her voice breaking. "But this isn't right. You're my uncle." Julian laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. It was bitter, angry. "I'm not really your uncle, Maya. Not by blood. I'm just your mother's half-brother. There's nothing wrong with what I'm feeling." Maya's mind was spinning. She didn't know what to do. She thought about screaming, but her mother was upstairs asleep. And what would that do? She thought about running, but where would she go? She thought about fighting, but he was stronger than her. So she did what so many survivors do in moments like this. She froze. Her body shut down, her mind disconnected, and she just stood there hoping it would be over soon, hoping she'd wake up and realize this was just a terrible dream. Julian took her silence as compliance, and in the moments that followed, a line was crossed that could never be uncrossed. Somewhere between the laughter and the last slice of cake, A line was crossed. A line that should never ever be crossed. When it was over, Julian straightened his shirt, looked at Maya like nothing had happened, and said, "I'll see you next week for dinner." And then he left. Just like that. Walked out the door, got in his truck, and drove home. Maya stood there in the kitchen, shaking, tears streaming down her face, unable to move. She didn't know how long she stood there. Minutes, hours. Time didn't make sense anymore. Eventually, she walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor. She pulled her knees to her chest and tried to make sense of what had just happened. But there was no making sense of it. There was only pain. There was only shame. There was only the crushing realization that the person she trusted most in the world had just destroyed her. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat on the bathroom floor until the sun came up, replaying everything in her mind, trying to figure out if there was something she could have done differently. Maybe if she'd screamed. Maybe if she'd fought harder. Maybe if she hadn't been so trusting. Maybe. Survivors of assault often blame themselves. They ask what they could have done differently, as if they had any control over someone else's evil. But the truth is, Maya did nothing wrong. She trusted someone she was supposed to be able to trust. She believed in family. She believed in safety. And those beliefs were weaponized against her. When Joanne came downstairs the next morning, humming to herself, still happy from the party, she found Maya sitting on the bathroom floor. And the moment their eyes met, Joanne knew. She knew something terrible had happened. Joanne dropped to her knees beside her daughter, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. "Maya, baby, what happened? What's wrong?" Maya couldn't speak at first. The words were stuck in her throat, trapped behind tears and shame and fear. But eventually, slowly, painfully, she told her mother everything. She told her about the comments Julian made, about the way he touched her, about how she'd asked him to stop and he didn't. She told her about how she froze, how she didn't fight, how she felt like it was her fault. And with every word, Joanne felt her world crumbling. Because the man Maya was describing, the man who had violated her daughter, was Joanne's brother, the person she'd trusted more than anyone, the person she'd welcomed into their home, into their lives without a second thought. Joanne's first instinct was disbelief, not because she didn't believe Maya, but because her mind couldn't reconcile the man she knew with the monster her daughter was describing. Julian, her big brother, the man who helped raise Maya. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. But she looked at her daughter's face, saw the pain, the trauma, the truth, and she knew. She knew it was real. Joanne held Maya while she cried, told her over and over that it wasn't her fault, that she believed her, that they'd get through this together. But inside, Joanne was breaking. She was angry. She was devastated. She was filled with guilt. How did she not see this? How did she not know? Were there signs she missed? Did she fail her daughter? These questions would haunt Joanne for years to come. But in that moment, she pushed them aside. Her daughter needed her, and she wasn't going to let her down again. Joanne made a decision. She was going to call the police. Maya panicked. "No, Mom, please, I can't. I don't want everyone to know. I don't want to go through that." Joanne understood. She knew how hard it would be, how public, how painful. But she also knew that if they didn't report it, Julian would get away with it. And if he got away with it, he might do it again to someone else's daughter, someone else's niece. Joanne held Maya's face in her hands and said, "Baby, I know you're scared. I know this is the hardest thing you'll ever do. But we have to. Not just for you, but for every other girl he might hurt." Maya sobbed. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Joanne said, "and I'll be right there with you every step of the way." So, Joanne made the call. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial the numbers, but she did it. When the operator answered, Joanne said, "I need to report a sexual assault." And just like that, everything changed. Within an hour, Two county detectives arrived at the house. A woman named Detective Laura Sterling and a man named Detective Thomas Boyd. They were kind, patient, and professional. They sat with Maya in the living room, assured her that she was safe, and gently asked her to tell them what happened. Maya told them everything. It was excruciating, reliving it all, putting words to the nightmare. But she did it. Detective Sterling took notes, asked clarifying questions, and told Maya how brave she was. Detective Boyd asked if Maya had showered or changed clothes. She had. She didn't know she wasn't supposed to. "It's okay," he said. "We'll work with what we have." They asked for Julian's full name, his address, his phone number. They asked about his relationship with Maya, how long he'd been in her life, if there had been any prior incidents. Maya told them everything she could remember. Before the detectives left, they explained what would happen next. They'd open an investigation, interview Julian, collect evidence, and depending on what they found, they might arrest him. They told Maya that the process would be long, that it wouldn't be easy, but that they'd do everything in their power to hold him accountable. Maya nodded, numb, exhausted. After the detectives left, Joanne called her sister, Beatrice, and told her what happened. Beatrice was in shock. "Julian? Are you sure? Maya must be mistaken. Julian would never." "Don't," Joanne said, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. My daughter was assaulted and I believe her." There was silence on the other end of the line, and then Beatrice said, "I'm sorry, I can't believe it." "Believe it," Joanne said. And then she hung up. That conversation set the tone for what was to come. The family was about to be torn apart. Word spread quickly. In a small town like Oak Creek, secrets don't stay secret for long. Within days, everyone knew. The girl who worked at the diner accused her manager uncle of assault. People whispered in grocery store aisles, at the post office, at church. Some people believed Maya, others didn't. And the ones who didn't were loud about it. Maya couldn't leave the house without feeling eyes on her. She'd walk into the diner for her shift and conversations would stop. People would stare, whisper, judge. One regular customer, an older man named Mr. Davis, looked at Maya and said, "Shame on you for trying to ruin that man's life." Maya quit the diner that day. She couldn't take it anymore. Her job at the plant was worse. Julian still worked there. And though HR had been notified and an internal investigation was underway, he was still showing up every day, acting like nothing happened. Maya couldn't do it. She couldn't walk those halls knowing he was there, knowing people were taking his side. So she quit that job too. Now she had no income, no savings plan, no way to move forward. Her dream of opening a cafe felt like a cruel joke. Joanne wasn't faring much better. Her family, the people she'd loved and trusted her whole life, were divided. Some stood by her and Maya. Her sister Beatrice eventually came around, apologized for her initial reaction, and became one of Maya's fiercest supporters. But others, like Uncle Arthur, refused to believe it. "Julian is a good man," Arthur said. "He's been a pillar of this community for decades. I think Maya's confused, maybe misunderstood something." Joanne stopped speaking to Arthur after that. Evelyn, Arthur's wife, tried to play peacemaker, but Joanne wasn't interested. "You're either with my daughter or you're against her," Joanne said. "There's no middle ground here." The family that used to gather for holidays, for birthdays, for Sunday dinners was fractured, and the cracks would never fully heal. Meanwhile, the investigation was moving forward. Detective Sterling and Detective Boyd were thorough. They interviewed Maya multiple times, each session more draining than the last. They interviewed Joanne, asked about Julian's behavior over the years, if she'd ever noticed anything inappropriate. Joanne racked her brain, replayed decades of memories, and realized there were moments, small things she'd dismissed at the time. The way Julian always insisted on being the one to tuck Maya in when she was little. The way he'd comment on Maya's appearance, call her his special girl. At the time, it seemed harmless. Now it felt like evidence. The detectives also interviewed people at the plant. Co-workers who'd worked with Julian for years. Most of them defended him. "Julian is a great guy," one co-worker said. "Always professional, always kind. I don't believe he'd do something like this." But one woman, a younger employee named Rachel, had a different story. She came forward and said that Julian had made her uncomfortable on multiple occasions. He'd stand too close, make comments about her appearance, once even touched her lower back in a way that made her skin crawl. She'd never reported it because she needed the job, and Julian was her boss's friend. But now, hearing about Maya, she felt she had to speak up. Rachel's testimony was crucial. It established a pattern of behavior. It showed that Maya wasn't an isolated incident, that Julian had a history of crossing boundaries. 3 months after Maya made her report, by the start of 2026, the detectives had enough evidence. They showed up at Julian's house early one morning with a warrant for his arrest. Julian answered the door in his pajamas, coffee in hand, looking annoyed. "What's this about?" he asked. Detective Boyd read him his rights. "Julian Drake, you're under arrest for sexual assault." Julian's face went pale. "This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong." "You'll have a chance to tell your side," Detective Sterling said. "But right now, you're coming with us." Julian was taken to the station, booked, fingerprinted, and photographed. His mugshot would later be published in the local newspaper, and the town would erupt in debate. Some people saw it as justice. Others saw it as a witch hunt. Julian posted bail within 24 hours. He hired a lawyer, a man named Warren Pierce, known for his aggressive defense tactics, and the battle lines were drawn. On one side, Maya, Joanne, and the few family members and friends who believed them. On the other side, Julian, his lawyer, and a community that didn't want to believe one of their own could do something so terrible. Maya knew the fight ahead would be brutal, but she also knew she couldn't back down. Not now. Not after coming this far. The months leading up to the trial were some of the darkest of Maya's life. She started therapy, something her mother insisted on, and at first, Maya resisted. "Talking about it isn't going to change what happened," she said. But her therapist, a woman named Dr. Helen Shao, was patient. She didn't push. She just listened. And slowly, session by session, Maya started to open up. She talked about the assault, yes, but she also talked about the guilt, the shame, the feeling that her body had betrayed her by freezing instead of fighting. Dr. Xiao helped her understand that freezing is a survival response, that her brain was trying to protect her, that she did nothing wrong. It took a long time for Maya to believe that. Some days she still doesn't. But therapy gave her tools, ways to cope when the flashbacks came, when the nightmares woke her up in the middle of the night, when the weight of it all felt too heavy to carry. Joanne was in therapy too. She was dealing with her own trauma, her own guilt. She kept asking herself how she didn't see it, how she let a predator into her daughter's life. Dr. Xiao reminded her that predators are experts at hiding, that they manipulate, deceive, and exploit trust. That Joanne was a victim too, in a way. But that didn't make the guilt go away. Meanwhile, Julian was free on bail, living his life like nothing happened. He went to work, went to the grocery store, even showed up at church on Sundays. People who believed him would stop him, shake his hand, tell him they were praying for him. People who believed Maya would cross the street to avoid him. The town was divided, and the tension was unbearable. Julian's lawyer, Warren Pierce, was building a defense. His strategy was clear. Discredit Maya. Paint her as someone seeking attention, someone with a grudge, someone who misunderstood an innocent interaction. Pierce dug into Maya's past, looking for anything he could use. He found out about her brief high school relationship with a local mechanic named Tyler, and tried to twist it to paint her as reckless. He found out she'd once seen a counselor in high school for generalized anxiety, and tried to suggest she was mentally unstable. It was a classic defense tactic. Attack the victim, make the jury doubt her credibility. But the prosecution, led by a determined district attorney named Michelle Torres, wasn't going to let that happen. Torres had been a prosecutor for 15 years, and she'd seen cases like this before. She knew how defense attorneys operated, and she was ready. Torres built her case carefully. She had Maya's testimony, Joanne's testimony, Rachel's testimony from the plant. She had text messages Julian sent Maya in the weeks leading up to the assault. Messages that seemed innocent on the surface, but took on a completely different meaning in context. She had the timeline, the opportunity, the motive. The trial date was finally set for mid-April. 6 months after the assault. 6 months of waiting, of worrying, of wondering if justice would truly be served. Maya was terrified. She'd have to sit in that crowded courtroom, face Julian directly across the aisle, and tell her story in front of absolute strangers. She'd have to be cross-examined by Pierce, who would try to tear her apart piece by piece. She'd have to relive the worst night of her life over and over again. But she was ready because she wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for Rachel, and for every other woman who had ever been forced into silence.